Welcome back. You're watching The Pitch, and he's all yours, Atish. 10 minutes to ask him all the questions you want.
Okay, Srini, one of the key points of your pitch was that you see a hole in that there aren't third-party intermediaries in the medical tourism space that are facilitating the interactions between patients and hospitals. I want to challenge that, if I may. There's a lot of companies, both here in India and around the globe, that are focusing on those patients and proposing to do similar things to what you're doing. How do you differentiate against all those companies? How do you create long-term value and differentiate yourself against those companies?
Right. As you perfectly pointed out, there are a lot of companies but which are not doing quality work. That's why, if you remember in my pitch, what I mentioned is a quality one-stop destination we got lacking. So if you see the entire value chain, there are different links in the value chain wherein the customer is getting only information from one or other hospital or one or other doctor. So we want to have all the information being collated from across the country and present it at a portal or information platform wherein you can actually interact with other patients for that particular disease or treatment, so that you can understand what exactly the other patients who travel to the country has experienced, so that you can take it forward from there. So we will have an interactive platform to start with as a as an online product, so that the entire marketing becomes easier. Because most of your patients are from the developed countries where the internet and broadband penetration is pretty high, and then the entire business will be offline. So it's not another .com idea. It's more or 10% online and 90% offline, and provide them all the services. As I said, starting from 3 different steps which we want to make sure. Give them unbiased information. Let them choose the doctor or the hospital which they want to go to, and help them in finding out the proper doctor. Once they figure out this is the doctor, this is the hospital where I want to get treated, just act as their brother or any friend who is residing in the country and take care of them throughout the entire value chain.
One thing you mentioned as well is that you want to focus on being the one-stop shop for India.
Right.
But if you look at customers in Canada, the UK, the United States who are coming to India and other places around the world for medical tourism procedures, they are being dealt with, or dealing with third-party intermediaries like yourselves who are not only looking at India, but looking at countries like Thailand and Malaysia, Dubai, Latin America, the Caribbean, as places that can deliver services to those patients.
Valid.
Why just focus on India?
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. That's where the gap lies in. That's where opportunity is. So you've got people who, if you look at their business model, they get most of their chunk of their revenues coming from from the hospitals and from the doctors. So there is a bias towards going to this particular hospital or to this particular doctor because they've already been paid by that guy. So if you see our model, that's where our differentiation comes from. First of all, we are only concentrating on India, so that you know from where which destination you are actually going to, and what are the amenities over there, what are the facilities you can go with, and all. And the second,
some of your competitors are doing India plus other areas.
Right.
What can you do in India that at least separates you from the pack for just people who are looking for India, who have already done their research and say, I know I'm going to India, let me look for information in India?
Yeah, from the competitor's point of view and from the patient point of view, there are 2 different things, right? From the competition point of view, as you rightly said, these are not concentrating on the Indian context, right? So they have got, they can't reach out to the grassroots level on single country because they are covering the surface of the, a lot of other nations. And mostly because Thailand, Malaysia and all other countries who get close to 1 million patients every year, they've got some easy procedure to follow and, a easy way to get out from the hospital's point of view. It's easier for these intermediaries to carry on the patients to those hospitals. So there seems to be a lot of bias, and hence, even though there is a lot of hype that has been created around the medical tourism in Indian space, it's not been taken care of properly. Even though we have got a lot of last March, we have got about 22 hospitals which are JCI accredited, and there are 4 hospitals which have got Harvard Business School, Harvard Medical Universities accreditation, and there are 15 other institutions which are trying for the JCI accreditation. So in the due course of time, because JCI accreditation is going to happen pretty fast in India, the quality of hospitals which you are going to have will be quite higher. But because most of these companies which have got formidable association with other countries, wherein the cost is a bit higher, maybe the quality is not up to the mark when compared to the Indian hospitals, but still they are taking out their patients to those destinations. So there seems to be a lot of bias happening. So that's where we want to come from.
And let's say you're able to do this better than other competitors.
Right.
What is your barrier to preventing them from copying you?
Right.
It seems like that the barriers to entry for what you're doing are relatively low.
Right, definitely. Talking from management, jargon, if you do the Porter analysis right now, all the 5 forces are against you. I mean, everywhere you got the positive towards other end, right? But given a 18 months time, if you can do the process which I have said, creating an interactive platform so that you're creating a content on the internet, and then making out the content rich individual communities for each particular treatment. So you're creating a barrier there. In terms of SEO and in terms of SEM, where the major of your internet traffic comes from.
But I'm sorry, what is the barrier exactly?
So yeah, just to give an example, let's say for example, if somebody is looking for a hair transplantation surgery, for which in India you will get by 120 or 1 by 20th or 1 by 25th cost of what is happening in US or Canada. So we will try and create a platform, interactive platform, let's say a forum with a chat, interacting within it, and have testimonials and a blog photography happening from the patients who have actually taken treatment.
But can't all your competitors do the same thing?
That's what I'm saying. Right now there is no person, according to our research, who is doing for each individual surgery. We have got 26 surgeries which were shortlisted as top surgeries, and nobody is doing for each individual surgery as a single platform, right?
I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that, but I think the other concern would be that even if you were able to do that if there's no one today, that there would be 100 people lined up tomorrow if they saw your success. Let me change gears a little bit to focus on some other questions. One of the big issues, or actually I'm sorry, two of the big issues that have hindered medical tourism growing in India so far is the liability issue and the reimbursement. Liability meaning if something goes wrong with the hospital here, who is responsible?
Right.
How do patients recuperate damages for those procedures? The other is kind of reimbursement. Insurance companies in the US and other areas of the world have yet to recognize medical tourism as a reimbursable expense.
Right.
Those are two big hurdles facing the space right now. How do you address that? Can you address that?
Yeah.
Whoever figures this out is really going to be the one that wins this space. So I'm kind of curious as to what your thoughts are on this.
Definitely. I mean, let's look at it in two different ways in terms of timeline. The first 30 months and post 30 months. So if you see the type of numbers which we are targeting, I mean 400 patients in the first year, 1,000 patients in the second year, 3,000 patients in the third year, and the type of already existing traffic inside India, 250,000 people, it's not about extending the pie. It's about capturing a percentage of the pie and giving them more information and giving them more sort of options to the currently existing people who are already coming into the space. So this is what this is where we need to concentrate in the first 30 months. In these 30 months, as I said in the Porter 5 forces thing, if we can create the barriers in all the different 5 places by creating the content in terms of entry barriers, by having more number of synergies with the hospitals as well as individual practitioners at the supply stage, and by getting into the whole value chain so that you have got more number of testimonials happening from your company, so that you create barriers on the value chain. So if you can create all these things in the first 30 months and can reach these particular numbers, then you become a formidable force inside the country who can represent the entire industry as such. I mean, to get 3,000 conversions, according to us, we need to have at least 100,000 inquiries. 100,000 inquiries means you need to have at least 300,000 visitors onto those particular platforms, right? So if these are the numbers that can be achieved by using this process in the first 30 months, then you are actually representing some 300,000 people who are interested in taking the medical treatment from India. So you can actually represent the Indian medical tourism as a community, and then you have got the bargaining power to go to the external world, let's say the insurance companies, the governments of the other countries, and represent Indian medical tourism as a industry or a sector, and bargain on behalf of these people.
Is there any way we can understand how much revenue you could potentially earn per person that you actually do convert from an inquiry to an actual patient?
All right. I mean, there are 4 different ways in which we can generate the revenue. The first one is from the patients, second one is hospitals, and third one is individual practitioners, and fourth one is the tour operators. Right. I mean, we think that there is a 50% conversion. Our research shows there is a 50% conversion from patients to go to the tourism level. So if you do the calculations and the optimal and minimum percentages which you have got, so we expect to get anywhere between 10,000 rupees to 25,000 rupees per patient on all the extra value chain. So for about first year we are expecting 400 patients, out of which we think 15,000 inquiries will be there and will be converted into 400. So that's what we are actually looking at, and that's a pricing model which we have got.
All right, you are by far the most confident person to ever make a pitch on this show, Srini. But we need to take a quick break. We'll come back and ask Atish if he thinks the same and what he really thinks of Srini's idea. Is it viable or not?
Overall, medical tourism is going to be a big industry over the next 5 to 10 years.